Well, hi, everybody. Happy Monday, the Thanksgiving weekend upcoming, wherever you happen to be. As you just saw, we're coming to you from Rome, coming from the Soho House here in Rome. Happy to join you for our global travel update as travel gets crazy for the next 10 days. Already is crazy, by the way. If you go by the AAA stats, they're estimating that 80 million plus will be traveling more than 50 miles this coming weekend. Now, here's what AAA doesn't tell you. They tell you most of those people will be in cars. We got that part. But what they don't tell you is how many people are going to be in each car. That's the part that always amazes me. Either way you look at it, though, it's going to be a lot of traffic. If you're smart, you will have already left town by now. If you haven't, there's one other opportunity for you. If you do what I like to do when I'm not in Rome, and that is let's look at Thanksgiving the way I look at it, as an obligatory dysfunctional family get together. Now, if you look at it that way and you still need to go, then here's what I've always done. Take the first flight out on Thursday morning. It won't be crowded. You'll still get to where you need to go in time to carve the turkey and have your relatives push all those emotional buttons. And then early Friday morning, as they're getting ready to get stuck in more traffic on the way to the mall on Black Friday, you're at the airport where nobody is. It's a ghost town. You can go bowling on that flight. The airfare is rock bottom, and you fly home. And the benefit of that is you satisfied your family obligations. You've carved the turkey. You got out of town, and now you can watch as much bad football as you want. I won't be watching football in Rome, but at least I won't be stuck on the San Diego freeway or on I-95 or wherever you happen to be. But if you are going to travel, the one day you must absolutely avoid, no, it's not the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, 2 days from now, although that's going to be pretty bad. The absolute day you got to avoid is a week from, actually, this coming Sunday, December 1st, because they're estimating at the TSA more than 3.7 million people being screened at security checkpoints. That will probably set the record for the most number of people screened on any one day. This is your opportunity to extend your trip and come back Tuesday or Wednesday. Now, speaking of Tuesday, this is a special day. Now we know about Black Friday. A lot of Black Friday deals in travel. You'll see them this week, especially cruise lines, by the way, with 45 to 60% off on some routes. But the deal you really want to watch out for is December 3rd, because that's the week in the travel industry known as the dead week, right? The week immediately following Thanksgiving, when all of you are recovering from your dysfunctional obligatory family get together. December 3rd, that's when all the travel deals come rolling out big time. Not just for next week, but through March of 2025. Now, one caution, it's not every seat on every plane. It's not every room at every hotel, and it's not every cabin on every cruise ship, but the deals are to be had starting on December 3rd, that Tuesday. So look forward to it. It should be fun. Lots of other stuff to talk about in the news as we continue to follow the Spirit bankruptcy filing. Yes, they're still operating most of their schedule, and will continue to do so for the foreseeable short-term future till we find out who's going to be their financial savior, if anyone. So nothing to worry about there other than the usual crowds and messes. You know, the one thing that we have to keep in mind, especially about holiday travel reporting, is you'll see it on every news operation, every radio show, every newspaper. Everything's going to be packed like sardines. Well, guess what? There's only so many seats on a plane. You're not packed like sardines. Every plane is full all the time now, not just for Thanksgiving. So keep that in mind. Okay. A couple of other items I want to talk about. Uber seems to be positioning itself to take over what? Expedia. How about that? And ironically, the CEO of Uber, his last job was he was the CEO of Expedia. What does that mean to you? Well, it might mean seamless travel bookings, but let's see what it does to fares. and availability. Now, nothing's been announced yet, but they are circling the wagons. So I'll let you know what happens with that. Uh, Also, I talked about this last week. It bears repeating this week. Airfares are plummeting, especially where I am now, overseas until March. I mean, we're talking about under $500 round trip fares anywhere you want to go to Europe from the US. So check those out. Also, which is a little bit of a surprise, Hawaii airfares seem to be plummeting. We're seeing very low rates, as low as $200 or 200, excuse me, $211 one way from Boston to Hawaii. That's a big deal. So check that out. And then a very interesting development that happened right here in Europe. The Spanish government is fining the low-cost carriers like Ryanair and EasyJet and other budget carriers a total of $187 million for overcharging and abusing passengers and making them pay extra for handbags on those low-cost airlines. I mean, we all know that their business model is dependent upon generating revenue for everything short of breathing, but I think they may have gone a little too far, and that's a huge fine, sending a huge message to those carriers in other markets. Now, of course, there will be an appeal. It'll go through the court system, but hats off to the Spanish government for finally saying enough is enough. Now, of course, we all know what will happen if the government's position is affirmed. Airfares will go up, right? But at least you know what you're going to pay for at the time you're making your booking. Uh, the folks on Ryanair know all too well that people try to get on the planes dressed completely as a backpack to avoid paying all those fees, including even for a boarding pass. So we'll be watching that story, but it's nice to know that somebody's been consumer friendly here at the government level, which brings me to the next item for bids on the Price is Right, the government level in the U.S. Right now, the U.S. Department of Transportation rules on delays and cancellations of flights are still in effect. They will probably still be in effect for a little while longer. It remains to be seen if the Trump administration will keep them or throw them out. But right now, especially during the holiday period of Thanksgiving and Christmas, let me remind you that if your domestic flight is delayed by more than 3 hours, you're entitled to compensation. If your international flight is delayed by more than 6 hours, you're entitled to compensation. Are the airlines going to voluntarily, mention this to you? Maybe not. Now you know. Okay. And if you were I am in Europe, EC Rule 261 has been around for a long time and kicks in, basically giving you your rights with immediate compensation. So hold on to that. Okay. An anniversary of sorts this week. I'm going to set it up for you. It's hard to believe because I covered the story, and it happened 28 years ago this week in November of what? 1996. It was Ethiopian Airlines flight 961. It was supposed to go from Addis Ababa to Nairobi in Kenya when it gets hijacked. And they break into the cockpit and they get the pilot to fly the plane at a much lower altitude. And they're in the Comoros Islands at this point, over water. And they say to the pilot, turn the plane to the right and fly it into the buildings, killing everybody. The pilot won't do it. Now, at this moment, there's a South African honeymoon couple on the beach, and she's taking home videos of her new husband frolicking on the beach. And they notice this 767 flying very low to the water. And so she turned her camera from her husband to film the plane, and this is what she saw. Absolutely amazing. You saw the wing fly off that plane. What happened is they took the fire axe that was in the cockpit, the hijackers did, and they hit the pilot over the head to get him to turn right. Instead, he slumped over, and that was the bank you saw. Uh, most of the passengers, believe it or not, survived that ditching, but many of them never got out of the plane and they died. Why? An important rule that we all learned from that particular terrible incident. They were all wearing their life preservers because they were being prepared to ditch, uh, and they did. But what happened? That when the plane hit the water, they automatically, all these passengers, they didn't know any better. They pulled the cord and inflated their life preserver. And as the water rose inside the cabin, they couldn't get out. They were trapped and they drowned. A lot of them got out, but that was an amazing, amazing story. Could have been so much worse. Anyway, that was 28 years ago this week. Hard to believe, but lessons learned on that. Now, one more thing for holiday travel, or for that matter, for any airline travel this week and next or next year. There are two algorithms out there that are being used by individual airlines, one by American Airlines and one by United Airlines. They're supposed to work. The one from American Airlines doesn't work. The one from United Airlines actually does work. Let me tell you the one about American. And these are about connecting flights. Let's say you're on your primary flight, your original flight, and it's late getting to your connecting airport. The American Airlines algorithm then determines on its own, based on the time and distance it's going to take you to go from one gate to another at that airport, whether you can make that connecting flight. And if the algorithm on its own determines that you can't make that connection, what does it do? It automatically bumps you from that flight and gives your seat away and rebooks you on another one if it can. Here's the problem with that algorithm. Passengers are a lot faster than the algorithm thinks they are, and a lot of them do make the gate in time, only to be told they no longer have a seat on the plane. It's been given away. Not good. America needs to work on that. On the other hand, United Airlines has an algorithm called Connection Saver, and it's actually a brilliant idea, and it does work. Let's say you're on a connecting flight on United, and your first flight is very late, and it doesn't look like you're going to make that connecting flight. If that system recognizes that the flight you're supposed to make, which may be the last flight of the day, if it recognizes that last flight of the day is terminating at the next airport and not connecting with any other flights, it actually holds the plane. I can't tell you how many people that saved, how many connections that saved, how many misconnected bags it saved, how many overnights at the airport it saved. You can imagine, right? And it's in place and operating now. So 3 cheers to United for that. Again, they're not going to do that on every flight. But if it determines that the flight that you're connecting to is just going to terminate at its next destination and it's not connecting with anything, you know what? They'll hold the plane. And you're seeing a few dozen passengers sometimes making that flight who otherwise would be sleeping on a cot at the airport. So good for them. Okay, now, a few more things that probably don't apply to you, but I thought I'd mention it to you anyway. And that is the U.S. Justice Department has finally stopped the Drug Enforcement Agency or the Drug Enforcement Administration from doing what we called an illegal cash search of passengers. Up until this week, if a DEA agent approaches me at the airport and asks to search me and does and finds cash, they can, without any questions asked or without any evidence whatsoever, seize the cash. And my options of getting it back are slim and none. Now, news bulletin, Not everybody who flies with cash is a drug dealer. But guess what? How much money has the DEA seized from people who couldn't get it back? More than $3.2 billion from airline passengers. And no charges, by the way, were ever filed by the DEA against those passengers. I would say that's not justice served at all. That's justice denied in many different cases. No due process at all. So the Justice Department now told the DEA they slapped them. You can't do that anymore. Okay, enough of that. Let's scroll through and say hello to some people. Priya is now watching from Marrakesh, where we just were a couple of weeks ago. Jim and Harriet, always up front in Richmond, Virginia. Matthew saying hello from Syracuse. Melanie saying hi from Miami. Enjoying a little cool spell here by Miami standards, okay. Lorena saying hi from Lansing, Michigan. I just found out about the mobile passport control and signed up for it. Signs it's like global entry, but free. It's sort of global entry light. For my money, I still like global entry, by the way. I mean, you did nothing wrong, but I like global entry. Okay. Daniel says, sound like I need a cafe caretto. Yeah, I'm a little hoarse today, if you hadn't noticed. Hey, but still going. Too many airline flights. Camilla saying hi from Tucson. And Raymond saying happy Thanksgiving week. Of course, Raymond was very good about updating me on my Wisconsin Badgers as I was flying around Europe. And of course, they lost again. If they're still bowl eligible, it's got to be a toilet bowl. All right, here we go. Here we go. Melanie's saying we're flying from Miami to Albany to see our son and grandkids for Thanksgiving. We don't like traveling over the holiday, but our son is in the military and will miss Christmas with his family as he's going on assignment to Antarctica for 2 months. So we feel we need to make the effort. He flies C-130s, the Hercules, and they land during skis on the ice. I've done it, by the way. And while taking supplies to the research scientists at the South Pole. If he's flying those C-130s, they're probably going out of Christchurch in New Zealand. And that's where the National Science Foundation is using those C-130s to resupply in the Antarctic. Well, have a great trip, by the way. And I hope he has a great trip. Ray's saying, greetings from DC. Are the fluctuation of visas causing a freezing effect on travel, dropping airlines' travel costs? No. It's just that time of the year. Let me give you the combination here. It was an election year. People were sort of nervous or stressed. They didn't fly. It wasn't a red or blue issue, an election issue. Then people got their credit card bills for the first 9 months of outrageous travel spending without price consciousness. And they went, whoops, I think I'll stay home for a while. And then you had foreign travel to the United States drop off for about the same reason, not the credit card reason, but the political situation or the immigration situation or worries about that. So now as we're ending the fourth quarter, going into the first quarter of 2025, that's why those load factors are not where they normally are, even though it's a lighter period. That's why those fares are dropping. And Jeff is going to the Palm Desert. Okay, Randy's saying, does Delta use an algorithm like United or American? Not to my knowledge. Phyllis is saying, traveling overseas for the first time, Ireland. Any advice? Yes, first out, you haven't told me when you're going. May I also recommend, Phyllis, you go to Amazon or Apple TV and look up the show that I did called Hidden Ireland. It'll give you a lot of ideas. Colleen says, go Bears. Yep, I'm telling you, the Bears are doing great this year. So are the Lions. And the Chiefs, I think they've only lost one game. But the last game, they squeaked through. I mean, it's been squeaky lately for the Chiefs, although they still have a great winning record. Leslie saying, traveling to France late May, when would be a good time to book my flights? May is a beautiful month. So is June. So is September. But if you're flying in May, end of February, early March, start looking. You want to be about 54 days out. That's the sweet spot. All right. The only exception to that is if you're traveling on a day in May that's a huge holiday in France. I'm not sure about that. Or a huge holiday in America if you're traveling domestically. But normally, the rule of thumb, about 54 days out. Okay. And Debbie's saying hi from New Jersey. Let me go to some of the questions that you also asked during the week. Here's one from Bob. Do you ever plan to get around to updating your travel books and how to travel correctly and cheaply? Yes, I do. As you know, I've done about 14 books. I'm working on 2 of them right now. One is about how to be a contrarian traveler, especially to learn the off season, to learn to love it. And then I'm also working on another book that I can't talk about right now, but both of those books will be out late in 2025. So thank you for asking. Ed says, is there still a New York Times travel show at the Javits Center? I met you there many years ago. Okay. Well, Ed, it's now called the Travel and Adventure Show, and it will be at Javits in January. So if you look up Travel and Adventure Show, you can Google it. You'll get the dates, the times, and all the things you need to know. And I hope to see you there. James, do I think we're headed for World War III with Russia? I do not. The idea that Putin is threatening to use low-grade nuclear weapons is I think, just a position. He's rattling the cage. Right now, I think the next 2 months are going to tell us everything with the incoming Trump administration. Trump is, as you know, announced that he thinks he can solve the whole thing in a day. I don't know how he's going to do that, but if I'm not going to get into politics here, I will tell you this. At the end of the day, every world leader who is in possession of a nuclear weapon, that is Russia, that's India, probably Pakistan, probably Iran, although we don't know that for a fact yet. And of course, the United States always knows what the horrific consequences are going to be, and you don't come back from them. So using it as a threat means you also want to extinguish yourself. And I don't really think anybody wants to do that. Now, if it's a game of chicken and nobody blinks, well, sayonara. But right now, I just think it's a position he's taking as the U.S. is supplying more weapons and systems to Ukraine, and that have longer range that can fly directly and target places inside Russia. So obviously, I watch that from a travel perspective because of all the airspace it has closed around the world. Not just the airspace over the Mediterranean, Jordan, and Israel, but the airspace over Ukraine, over Russia, over parts of the Russian Far East and parts of China. This is a significant concern to a lot of people. So we'll be watching that as well. All right. Here's one from Linda. What's the current tourism situation like in Rome? I'm headed there for a couple of weeks and want to avoid any crowds. Well, if you're headed here in a couple of weeks, you won't find any crowds. This is my point. It's the great off season. That's when you want to come. Now, if you come in June or July and August, you get no sympathy from me. The crowds at the Trevi Fountain alone could sink a ship, and at the Colosseum and at the Vatican. But even now, you want to go see the Vatican or St. Peter's or the Sistine Chapel or the Colosseum or the Trevi Fountain or so many other wonderful, the Spanish Steps, it won't be crazy. It will be crazy June, July, and August, and they have to deal with that. But if you're coming in a couple of weeks, you're going to be fine. Okay. Elsie says, if Uber acquires Expedia, will any other site be able to compete? Are Travelocity and Expedia still the same? Yeah, they are. So is Orbitz. It's all one big deal. So let's see what the U.S. Justice Department will do if this is at least announced, to see if it violates any antitrust or restraint of trade policies. It's a big deal if it happens. Here's one from Tom. I'm 58 and trying to think of the out-of-business airlines I've flown on since I was a kid. Okay, Down East, Allegheny, Eastern, Continental, US Air, Northwest, WOW, People Express. Can you think of any others? Well, Tom, I'm not flying with you. Every airline you fly goes bust. No, just kidding. Oh, I can think of many others. How about Legend? How about Muse Air? How about People Express? Or did you mention? Yeah, you mentioned People Express. How about Give me a second here. God, there's so many. In fact, I believe there's been since 1978 was announced and put into effect. I think we've had over 138 outright airline failures, not Chapter 11 bankruptcies like Spirit Airlines just filed, but outright failures, insolvencies, and liquidations. Uh, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Remember, we just saw a merger that was completed between Hawaiian and Alaskan. We're going to see who wants to take Spirit to the dance, if anyone. And so stay tuned. Okay. Uh, Rachel says, I'm looking for a good deal on December 3rd. That's the Tuesday. Are these deals for international or just domestic airfares? No, for both. Uh, do you think it will be a huge airfare savings day or is it just hype? No. Remember, these are incremental, uh, Black Tuesday days for sales. It's not every seat on every flight. But if you happen to want to go to Greensboro or you want to go to Warsaw and it's on sale, you just lucked out. But it's not just going to be 2 or 3 flights announced. It's going to be a lot of seats on a lot of flights to a lot of destinations by a lot of different airlines. So you lose nothing by waiting till Tuesday. Okay. Nicole says, I'm currently planning a 1-week trip to Portugal, but it centers around a wedding. The wedding events are Wednesday, Thursday nights in Cascais. I was thinking 2 days in Lisbon and 3 nights in Cascais, which gives me 3 extra days. Any suggestions? Yep, I got one for you. Excuse my cough again. Porto, one of my favorite cities, and right on the river. It's an amazing location with one of my favorite restaurants on the planet called 1756. It's in Porto. Order the salmon tataki. My bet is you'll end up having 2 orders. That's how good it is. Okay, now it's time. Let me stream down quickly before we go to the next subject. Hold on. Well, thank you, Lorena. She says, get better. I don't feel sick, just losing my voice. She says, and rest up while you binge watch Wheel of Fortune. You betcha. I'll be buying vowels left and right. Okay, Diane says, I'm flying to Tokyo in October. When is the best time to book? Okay. Well, you're way too early. You're about 7 months too early. You want to buy it in either late July, mid to late July. Okay. And Adrian's saying hi from Huntington Beach. Okay. Julie's saying going to the Cotswolds in May. Can I do it without a car? And how many days do you recommend? Well, yes, you can do it without a car, but look, they drive on the wrong side of the road, right? And you're not going to drive on the wrong side of the road. So why don't you get a car and a driver for at least a day to get you to the places that you can't easily access with public transportation, and you'll have a great time. It's worth the investment. Okay? Renew has added one to Tom. How about Mohawk? And Sharon weighs in with Tower Air. You're right, guys. Tower Air and Mohawk, absolutely. And we haven't even dealt with the international carriers that failed during that time, like Laker and a few others. Okay. Time to go to the photo of the week now. Let's do it. Now, this one comes in from Dave Steinert. And I know this photo very well because I took a similar one. Where is it? It's in Ushuaia, one of the southernmost cities in the world in Argentina. And Dave writes, early morning, returning to the sleepy port in Ushuaia, we had spent the last 15 days sailing and visiting amazing sites in Antarctica. You heard me mention a great restaurant in Porto. One of my other favorite all-time restaurants is actually in Ushuaia. It's called Kaupe, spelled Kaupe. It's run by a husband and wife and their son. Unbelievably great food. And yes, Ushuaia is unbelievably sleepy too. So the highlight of my trip to Ushuaia is that restaurant. I just thought I'd tell you that. Okay, a couple of housekeeping notes. The radio show last Saturday, we just broadcast it from the World Travel Market in London. and with a concentration on the explosive numbers in Saudi Arabia. And this week, a surprise, we stayed in London, and it's coming from the Virgin Hotel in a neighborhood most of you don't know, Shoreditch. So stick around for that as well. In the meantime, I hope you've gotten out of town by now. And if you haven't, follow my advice. Fly Thursday morning, come home on Friday morning. In the meantime, I hope everybody has a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Anthony, thank you for doing all that work in California while I'm here in Rome. And I promise you my voice will be back next week. I'll see you on the radio. That's 10 o'clock or 10:05 in the morning Eastern time on Saturday. And if you're not stuck at the mall. And if not, we'll see you next week from another remote location somewhere around the world. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And we'll see you after Turkey Day.